Please join me in welcoming our next presenters, Trish Healy-Luna and Janet Healy-Hillier. Nashville-based author and speaker, Trish Healy-Luna co-wrote a much-heralded children's book, Timby Talks About Addiction, which has been named a promising practice by the National Alliance for Drug-Endangered Children. Trish wrote the first draft of this story more than 30 years ago for her then very young children, Nick and Sammy, as their father struggled with substance use disorder, a struggle that eventually took his life. Trish knows firsthand the shame, stigma, and chaos that comes from dealing with a loved one's addiction, which can impact generations to come. Trish holds a master's degree in philosophy and ethics from Vanderbilt University. Trish's sister and co-author, Janet Healy-Hillier, has a master's degree in mental health counseling. She has extensive postgraduate training in complementary modalities like mindfulness and somatic practices, and has studied the benefits of them when used with children. Janet saw firsthand how beneficial and empowering it can be for a child to learn techniques and self-soothing skills to gain a much-needed sense of control in chronically stressful situations. She has attended numerous conferences, seminars, and workshops led by noted experts, including Dan Siegel, Jack Kornfield, and His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Janet is currently working towards a certificate in trauma-informed practices in a program led by Bessel van der Kolk and other pioneers in the field of trauma studies. Please welcome Trish and Janet.
Hi. Wow, that sounded great. I wish Janet was here, but you just get me today. So we are in two different states. I'm here in Tennessee, Janet's up in New York, but she couldn't join us today on this panel. So again, it will just be me. I see some familiar names on there. I don't know if you guys are just on or scheduled on there. So I think the best way to do this is I will just start sharing my screen, and then hopefully that will bring you to the PowerPoint or not. Okay, let me see. Tell me if someone just say like, yes, we're in.
You're good.
Okay. And you can see it now, yes?
Yes.
Fantastic. So as was said, I am going to share about Timby Talks About Addiction. And this is what the whole sweet little package looks like. And I'm going to sort of take it apart and give you the backstory as we go through the presentation. And then as I saw with others, you just can put questions in the Q&A in the chat, and I'm assuming someone will ask me them or I can pull them up through the chat. Either way, you guys just let me know what works. So Timby, now I do have one question as I'm trying to see my, let me see if I can, okay, drop that down so I can actually see my screen. So as we said, this is a book, and we know, those of us who work in this field, there are just no real resources for the young children that are impacted by this disease. And it doesn't just affect the addicted person, it impacts the whole family. So I did start writing this book 30 years ago for my children. And, back then, this is before the whole Google machine. So I just had nowhere to go to try to find something to open up and have a conversation with my kids about what was incorporated, encompassing our entire lives. So then in 2014, I grabbed my sister who had her degree in mental health counseling and asked her to help really update the book. And then together we put in really evidence-based trauma-informed practices to directly address ACEs, which, as we all know, adverse childhood experiences. Hold on, we're going to, there we go. So addiction is a family disease. It affects each and every member, from the grandparents to the grandkids. And very often, though, children are overlooked in the treatment and recovery from this disease. So I stand here today with you, and I like to just say how this is, my story. This is my family. It's impacting us and affecting us on a daily basis. So as I stand here, I do have, from my grandparents down to my grandchildren, who have been affected by this. I have both of my parents who are adult children of alcoholics. And I always like to say to everybody when this slide pops up, like, I'm not really sure what my mom was thinking about with those dresses. Like, can you even actually call that a dress? That was 1963 or whatever. And that was what you wore. But so while I didn't have alcoholism in my home, I didn't have active drinking happening in my house. Both of my parents are adult children of alcoholics. So they had all of the isms that come with that disease. And we just learned all the crazy things that you do, like shame and keeping secrets and, not speaking the truth about what's happening right in front of you. And because I was raised in this dysfunctional home, my brain learned different ways how to cope with things and what was normal and what I was attracted to and what spoke to my amygdala. I mean, to, my lizard brain, what felt right and normal. So I married my husband, and even though he was not in active addiction when we married, eventually this would take over and destroy his life and negatively impact all of our lives. And currently, my beautiful granddaughters have no visitation with their mother, my beautiful daughter, because she is in active addiction right now. And so, as you can see, it's just, it's everywhere. And I've watched it now as I'm the grandmother, watching and talking to my young granddaughters who Timby helped them, well, which I'll talk about later in the presentation. But this is, if we need to really grasp and get a hold of the truth of this, that this is of what the multi-generational impact of ACEs are. And that children of substance abusing parents are more than twice as likely to have alcohol or drug use disorders themselves, which, I've seen it play out in my family. And that children are at risk for poor outcomes even as young as the age of 2 and 3. And of course, I knew this because my children, my husband went through treatment when I was 6 months pregnant with my son. So I know he was just born into this disease of addiction and the problems that occur with that. So let's talk about what ACEs are. And there's this quick little video. I hope you guys can hear it.
My parents don't understand. All the drinking and fighting means I'm scared. I'd like a cuddle, perhaps a bedtime story, but mostly I'd like them to stop shouting at me. And sometimes they hit me. Feeling scared every day and not feeling loved or wanted will change me for the rest of my life. Later, I'll have problems at school, problems with alcohol, and I'll get in trouble with the police. What's happening to me right now means I'm more likely to have serious health problems in middle age and die sooner than I should. Doctors say my life is full of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. But in my world, this means I see my dad hitting my mum. Dad's got a drinking problem, and mum's always crying, even with the tablets. I'm always being shouted at and hit. After the booze and fags, there's not a lot of money for toys or clothes, or even food. I'm getting used to being scared all the time. Now I'm just angry. Doctors say things are changing inside me. My brain isn't learning how to control my feelings properly. My body can't relax like those kids who don't have ACEs, so my body won't be able to repair itself properly when I get older. making it more likely I'll get cancer or heart disease as an adult. It hurts when my parents hit me, but the real damage is hidden, and that damage will be with me for life.
Okay. Let me see if I can. There we go. So that's a pretty heavy, every time I watch that, I think, I've seen it so many times, but it always just kind of gets me because it just really shows so clearly that if we don't deal or help a child deal with these adverse childhood experiences now while they're young, help them get a grip on that, there are lifelong consequences for them and their health which we're just now coming to grips with. So ACEs are traumatic experiences that occur before the age of 18, verbal, emotional, physical, psychological, being raised in a household with domestic violence, alcohol, substance abuse, or parental separation. And, in my children's home environment, the situation was there wasn't drug use happening in the house, but their dad just didn't come home. And so that created this vacuum. And of course, I was then thrown into a panic because I knew what was happening. I knew what he was doing. And so I could not be a fully present caregiver to my children, even though I was the, normal one. So God help them, right? If that's the best that they're going to get. So anyway, and this evidence is showing that they develop health harming and antisocial behaviors. You hear about this in school, what's happening, teachers can barely, the schools are overcrowded. They already don't have enough teachers for kids. And then you have a child who's dealing with substance abuse at home, and that becomes just more of a special need that we're just not equipped to deal with. And then they're just less likely to become productive members of society. And I knew that my children were being exposed to this, and I knew that I needed help coping with this. And when I searched for help, if you ever were honest and were saying, my husband has a drug problem, you might as well have said he had two heads. And I can remember, I tell a story, Nick, when he was, maybe this age in this picture or a little bit younger, we were at McDonald's and I had picked him up, sat him on the counter, and a police officer came in. And I used to say to the kids, your daddy has a problem, because I didn't want to say he was sick, because then if I got a cold or, but I would say your daddy has a problem. And so when this police officer walked in, my son looks at the cop, because Joe was also a police officer and a fireman. And he said to him, my daddy has a problem. And I'm sure, this cop is like looking at me like, okay, lady, what's happening here? Do I need? And I'm like, kids, But anyway, this is just to say there wasn't, and still, we're trying to create safe spaces now where children can come forward and talk about what's going on without the shame and stigma and without the fear. But certainly in 1989 or 90, this was not the case. So, as I asked my pediatrician, asked my pastor, asked teachers, and there just was nothing for me to read to my kids. And I felt like there were books about everything, even pooping, but yet nobody was talking about this huge issue, which just takes over a family. And so the original book was called My Daddy Has a Problem. And you can see my little notes that are written down here on what my goals were. And these were just important, just to open the communication, name the feelings, talk about it, let them say how they're feeling, scared, angry, mad, and let them know that it's not their fault and that they don't have control. And then I really wanted to just end the stigma. And I have another page, I don't think it's in this presentation, where I say I recommend looking up in your yellow pages. So I don't even know if they make those anymore. So I printed this out, taped it together, and sent it off to every publisher that I could find the address to, because that's how it worked back then. And of course, nobody wanted to touch this book or talk about it. The letters that I got back is like, this is not really a topic that we deal with, or this is not something that we want to talk about to young children. And that, you know, first of all, that only furthered to, you know, give me a feeling of shame, like that this was happening in my family. I must be bad, we're bad, or it's, you know, it's just like a dirty, ugly secret. And so after years of trying, I just had to put the book away and get on with my life. But the disease did not go away from its impact on my family. This is a picture of my children, one of the last ones that they have with their father, who died soon after this picture was taken in 2019. And Joe, their dad, had been in and out of recovery. And right before this, you know, he was doing well. And but then he had knee replacement surgery. And that was from his years of being a fireman. And they gave him OxyContin because back then they said it wasn't addictive. So, and he overdosed from that and died. So he became part of these tragic statistics. And, you know, you guys can read, so I won't read each of them, but, you know, some of them just really rip your heart out. And we know that this is now getting worse with COVID. You know, this was the sort of original epidemic, if you will. And then you put on top of that this global pandemic, and this did not help these statistics. And so one of the things I like to say is the one where it says 136 Americans die every day. That number, I think, is going up. You know, the numbers are sort of always behind schedule. So let's just say that's from 2019. You know, in the last 2 years, we all know stuff's gotten worse. So, but if you think about an entire Southwest flight just dropping out of the sky, and we never knew where or when that was going to happen. You know, we as a nation would stop and be like, what is happening here? Like, we have to fix whatever this is. But this is what's happening. And so, you know, whenever I see a plane going over, I just think, like, imagine if that just fell from the sky, and all those lives and all of the people that impacts, what would we do? So I'm just waiting for us to like wake up and really grab that statistic. But this is really about the kids. Over 18 million kids are impacted by this disease, and close to 500,000 were in the foster care system. Again, that was in 2017. And these kids are 7 when they're coming in. And again, that age is getting younger. I also put this slide in here because this always blows my mind, because you guys all know that fentanyl is pretty much all that's out on the street now. And but that is all the fentanyl it takes, that tiny little drop. And I can remember saying that, and I just thought, this is unbelievable. And that's all it takes for someone to overdose. So that's just terrifying to me. Anyway, the other thing on this is this photo was part of the, you know, real push to get back into making Timby come to life, like whatever it took. I mean, the world is different, publishing is different, we have more control, they're self-publishing now. So, and this picture, there's and I think you guys can see it on your screen, that the Ohio police, they actually got some pushback for posting this photo, because this isn't about shaming the addict, right? Like, these people, happens to be this boy's grandmother and her boyfriend, who overdosed, and this little 4-year-old is in the back seat. And, you know, they did not wake up that day thinking like, hey, let's have a great day, let's do this with this little child. This is this disease that's insidious, but yet this child who is already with his grandmother, it breaks my heart every time I see it. And I just think, if that police officer could have been armed with Narcan, which I'm sure he was, and then at the same time be armed with Timby, to give that to this little boy in that moment of crisis, to start the healing, that was sort of like the impetus and the dream. So again, I grabbed Janet. We worked to update this book and put in evidence-based, trauma-informed protocols to help these kids. And then there was like, we couldn't do my daddy because sometimes it's the mommy, sometimes it's grandma, sometimes it's an aunt, uncle, whoever. So we named the character. And I always share this story that I was just standing in my kitchen and we were going to say that this character talks about addiction. And so I like alliteration. So I was trying to find a T name. So I was like, but something that was cute. And so I wrote down a couple of things and I came up with Timby. And so then I had to Google Timby, like what was that already something? And it wasn't. But now later in this process, here we are. So this was in, let's say 2014 when it became Timby. In all of our work that we're doing, I don't even remember how we figured it out, but if you look at those initials, it's trauma-informed mind-body integration. And it would just feels like, sort of a divine moment of, wow, I named it just because it was cute, but now we can say it is trauma-informed mind-body integration is what you get in Timby. So let's listen to the story. Hi, I'm Trish, and I'm here today with my granddaughters,
Maddie and Vivian.
And I'm here to read a book that I co-wrote with my sister called Timby Talks About Addiction. My name is Timby. I have something to share about Daddy's addiction. Please pull up a chair. I've learned that addiction is called a disease, but not like a cold where you cough or you sneeze. A disease is not something a person would pick. It could be your mommy or daddy who's sick. Addiction can happen with pills, drugs, or drinking. When addiction takes over, it changes their thinking. My friend has a mommy so loving and sweet. When I go to her house, there's always a treat. But sometimes my friend can seem frightened or sad, and I wonder if her mom does things like my dad. You see, with my dad, he's so big and so strong. You might look at him and think nothing is wrong. But when Daddy starts drinking, things start to change. He starts to sound weird and he starts to act strange. When Daddy acts weird, it's scary for me. Sometimes he does things I don't want to see. Other days, he's just gone. That bothers me too. When he leaves, I feel worried and sad. Wouldn't you? When I'm feeling like that, worried or scared, I find someone to talk to, someone who cares. This someone, like mommy or teacher, will say, "You're not the cause of Dad's problems. No way." When grown-ups have problems, they're not from a kid. They are in charge of the things that they did. It's not my fault. What great news to hear. Thinking I caused it was my biggest fear. Sometimes the mixture of feelings I've had get jumbled inside me as sad, bad, and mad. My head starts to hurt and my insides feel tight. That's one way my body says, something's not right. It's funny to think of my body this way, but it's actually true. It has something to say. When my body is speaking, I've learned to tune in and find ways to let go of my feelings within. The first thing I've learned that can help me calm down is to take some deep breaths as I sit on the ground. I breathe in, I'm a mountain so tall and so wide. I breathe out, I am still and feel more calm inside. I breathe in, I'm a tree with roots deep in the ground. I breathe out, I am strong, I feel safe, I feel sound. Something else that can help is to go out and play. It helps me let go of the sad, mad, bad day. I can sing a loud song while I dance like a clown. I can go punch my pillow or jump up and down. I can play with my friends or go throw a ball.
but not at a person, of course, at a wall. I've learned that my sadness and anger aren't bad. They're perfectly natural feelings to have. With help from safe people, I'm learning each day that even though times can be hard, I'm okay. I am good, I am loved, I am strong as can be. These are the things trusted people teach me. These ideas that I've learned, I wanted to share because I know how you feel and I really do care. They'll work great for you if you try them, you'll see. And here's a big hug from your new friend, Timby. Thanks for listening. To learn more about the story, please visit timbytalk.com. Thanks so much.
Okay, so those are my cute little grandbabies who Vivian has her teeth now. So it's funny to look back when she didn't have them. So how does Timby help? So Timby talks in a language that children can hear. And then I actually saw, I quick jumped in the Q&A. One of the questions is, what's the age group? So now that you've heard the story, when we originally, books are usually have a pretty firm age range. So it's usually 3 to 8, 8 to 12, and then up to into preteen. So we originally, the thing that's closest to my heart was for very young children, because there are like some resources. They start to do things for kids around the age 7, 8, even in family recovery programs, but there's nothing for, 2, 3, 4-year-old. But what we heard back from people in the field who are frontline workers, like meeting these families in the recovery courts, in foster care, in, treatment programs, is, they said a lot of times children who have this in their family, there's a lot of instability. And so they haven't had the same direct sort of line in school, and their reading might be a little bit delayed. So we put ages 3 to 12. And I have to say this, I go out and speak to a lot of different schools and different age ranges. So say from pre-K through 5th grade. And those 5th grade kids eat this up, and they just love Timby. And they know at this age that they've sort of needed it. So it has a really positive impact. I mean, I have adults come to me crying, saying, I needed this book. I mean, didn't we all, right? Just to hear that it's not your fault, and you're okay, and you are loved, and you are good. So anyway, we expanded that range, and yes, somebody else said, are we thinking about doing something for teens? We are asked all the time to do the next, and we do have like sort of the next expanded version. I'm a one-woman show, so this is getting the word out that this is available, is critical right now. But yes, absolutely, that is in our plans, and also books about mental illness, incarceration, that Timby needs to talk about all these things with kids, and then provide these really critical coping skills, right? So it's one thing to have the conversation, but now what are we going to do about it? So anyway, Timby introduces these concepts and practices that build resilience. So this is what we need. We need kids to become resilient. That's how they're going to survive it. And the biggest way to do that is to give these kids a sense of agency in the chaos of their lives. So I will say this, when we wrote the book, after we wrote the book, I was adamant about creating the actual Timby bear, because first of all, that face, please, it's just so cute. But my vision was that little boy could just hold on to something, and hugging releases neurochemicals. And so I wanted a little child in distress to have something to hug and hold. But then when they learn that their friend Timby understands what they're going through, because this is Timby's same situation. So anyway, if you ask children, like, what do you love about Timby? It's the bear. and they reported that they wanted to take it everywhere. So again, listening to feedback. So I love to hear what everybody has to say about this. Is we made the little pocket Timby. So here's a little tiny Timby that can go everywhere. And whenever little Timby comes out at the school, I just get the audible "aww" because everybody just wants a Timby. So the great thing about that when I go into schools is that it sort of becomes cool to talk about what's going on, what Timby's talking about, and kids are very open and want to share what's happening. And I always say it might not be them, but they have a friend who this is happening to, so they can be a good friend by learning about that. Okay, so let's see what Timby is talking about. So addiction is a disease. The parent didn't choose it. So this removes the shame and the guilt from the parent. And I say to my granddaughters all the time, their other grandmother had an aortic aneurysm. And I say, nobody said to Granny, like, well, Granny, what did you do? Or blame her for having that happen. I said, in the same way, mommy's disease is not her fault. And she's not a bad person because she has this disease. It's important for kids to know that they're not alone. Other children have a parent going through this same thing. And I have to say that for me, what has gotten me through, I've been sadly around addiction a lot. The hardest, person for me to have dealt with this is my daughter. And it has just, near killed me. But I have an amazing group in Al-Anon that walk me through this and keep me as sane as I am, which someone might argue isn't very sane. So also we need to have children know it's not their fault. Children are egotistical. That's how we work as kids. We think when we go to bed, everybody goes to bed. And when they wake up, everybody wakes up, the sun rises and sets on them, and they engage in magical thinking. So I also remember, I share this story that my son, Nick, when he was 5 in kindergarten, and he came home and I picked him up and he came running out into the car and he said, Mommy, I have the answer. I can just give Daddy this ribbon and he can just say no. And this was Nancy Reagan's Just Say No campaign. So I was like, thanks, Nancy. Like, let's make it like, let's have a kid think that they can just give Daddy this ribbon and he can just say no to drugs. So anyway, they have to be taught that adults are responsible for their own behavior. Then here's the key pieces here. We need to teach children that they can learn to tune in to the stress and trauma that they're feeling in their bodies and acknowledge that this is what's happening so that they can then be more in control of the reactions that they have to this response. So and then they gain control. They can take some deep breaths. They can sit on the floor. Being out in nature calms the nervous system. I mean, we're learning all these, cool things that we can do. Playing, a kid doesn't really want to sit down in the heavy stuff and just be like, let's talk about this. Playing, being a kid, staying silly, not being so bogged down and having to feel like it's up to them to fix this problem. Singing or shouting, this gives the freeing your voice for communication. And then punching a pillow or other soft objects. I mean, obviously this isn't for every child, someone who has like anger issues or whatever, but it's a way of venting some of that frustration in a safe, positive way. So emotions are perfectly natural. So something that I tell the kids when I read to them, this is something that I have to remember even as an adult. And everything that I say that I'm teaching them, I said, you need these skills through your whole life because you deal with stress your whole life. But emotions are fleeting. But when I get stuck on them, when I keep ruminating about them, that's how they, get into like a rut in my brain. So our goal is to disrupt those ruminating thoughts because that's not helpful. And then it's very interesting. They have a study showing that labeling your emotions, being able to say, like people would think like, oh, let's not talk about it. But when you can label a response, what you're feeling. Your amygdala can calm down and move on to other things. Like if you can say, okay, I'm scared right now, or I'm sad right now, or mad, then that awareness of that is your first step to gain control. So finally, TIMBY helps a child to know they are good, they are loved, they are strong as can be. And I can tell you this, when one of the we got a lot of feedback from social workers, psychologists, therapists, DCS workers, recovery court people. And they were saying, a lot of kids, when they're in foster care or, sort of in this system, they don't feel loved. But the truth is they are loved, right? We are all each fundamentally worthy of love. And so we need to know that and be told that, however, wherever that comes from. And there's a little heart over the head that's like sort of love from above. So we have this handy list in the book of skills and practices that you can teach a child and they can be encouraged to develop. And you can read them here, but we can read them together. Talking to safe adults. And I will tell you that my granddaughter, Maddie, who now just turned 10, even though we talk about TIMBY in our family, my girls know that, my granddaughters know the book by heart. There was active drug use going on when they were visiting my daughter, which I did not know. And the other grandparents didn't know. And they were living primarily with their father, and my daughter just had visitation. And actually Maddie talked to her teacher to tell her teacher what was going on. She finally cracked when my daughter dropped her off very late for school one day. And then DCS was called and they were removed until, further investigation. And that was the right thing to happen. But I just, it kind of blows my mind that these kids, even having me, who they know wrote this story, that we talk about it openly, that it is a safe space to have that conversation. The image in the book is TIMBY talking to the teacher. And it says, this someone like mommy or teacher will say, you're not the cause of dad's problems, no way. So anyway, taking deep breaths, remember the addiction is not your fault. Learn to listen to your body, play outside, play with friends, read books, play with your teddy, and always remember you're good, you're loved, and you're strong as can be. And when a kid falls down, you don't run over and going like, oh my God, we're going to be in the hospital with this. No, you just say, you're okay, you're okay. So we want to encourage that same kind of thing. So then we also have a workbook. So we have the TIMBY book. And then we were asked to expand on those principles that were in here. And so we did a workbook, and it was a lot easier because we didn't do it in rhyme, which was smart because we could get a lot more information in here. So this just helps. I think in the presentation, we kind of break down. So we all know that when kids are playing, you can get some more information in there because you're not directly saying like, I'm teaching you something. So here are just some pages in there, and I think we break this down. So because children are sensitive and pick on the signals of stress and tension, that's what they can hold within their body. Their vocabulary is limited. Listening to your body is this critical step to allow the release of the stress and trauma. And children are asked to circle some symptoms that speak to how they're feeling. So it's really teaching them that their body is speaking to them. Children can describe a happy place. The studies are showing that you can help your brain just by picturing a better scenario. So children are asked to draw something that makes them feel calm. Again, being out in nature has cognitive, physiological benefits. Finding a trusted person. This is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's big thing. He's saying that even one person, if one person that you feel safe with, is the single most important aspect of mental health. We also know that even if you're feeling down, what they say, turn that frown upside down, so that even just doing that releases a signal to your brain. If you can just smile and feel better. Tammy remembers that being thankful and with gratitude is another positive emotion. that improves well-being. Hugging the Timby, as we talked about, releases positive neurochemicals. And then children think about and draw something that helps them feel better. So it's incredible what kids can come up with that will help them to feel better and have them be part of the solution. It is just mind-blowing to watch a kid come up with things. And then we know what fires together wires together. So if we just keep sort of repeating those positive outlets, then we have better outcomes for kids. And then some pages are just for fun because a kid just needs to have fun. And then it's more appealing than just saying like, get out your homework or your workbook. So here's Timby just with some of my sweet little babies. And there's little Caleb with the dimples that you could just like eat some ice cream out of. I love that little boy. So this is my family today. And you can see my daughter is not in that picture. But I have to say right now, today, she is seeking treatment and recovery. She just completed 15 days and we are looking for alternatives for her for a long-term recovery process, but she is now open to that. So for today, it's a good day. But, you know, as Timby, but our family is just marked up by this disease. My granddaughters have not seen their mother in over a year. You know, my son is a high functioning, very successful person, but I know internally now, especially that he has had a son, he has wrestled with sort of those questions of like, how did my dad, you know, leave us and not stay with us? So I'm looking at the time and I think I've just left us enough time for some questions. And I do want to thank, I can't even see you guys, which this is one of the reasons I hate Zooms, but I love it because it does let us keep getting together. But I can't see any of you, but I'm just going to send like love and hugs and lots of appreciation for all that you're doing to help everybody heal from this disease. So I'm not sure if someone wants to pop on Austin or someone and have convos. Do you want me to look at the Q&A or the chat?
Hi, Trish. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Good. Thank you for coming out and speaking with us today.
Uh-huh.
A list of just some questions that we can go through.
Sure.
So somebody asked, how do you approach a child with ACEs to open up?
So one of the great things with Timby is all you have to do is just hand a child a Timby, right? So what we know too is that for a kid, if they've been, let's say, in an abusive situation, physical touch might be too much right away from a person, but a child can feel hugged by Timby. And then just reading the story, you're not sort of saying anything. You know, when I read it to all the kids at school, it's not targeted at anyone. I'm just reading this story. So then a child, I mean, I've never heard of a circumstance where a child didn't then have some comment or question about how, oh, Timby understands me. Timby knows exactly how I feel. So, I mean, that's why it's there. So it's the little a Timby to hug, and then just reading the story sort of opens up the floodgates, if you will.
So our most asked question is, where can we get Timby and where can we get the book?
Okay, so it's timbytalks.com, and we do a discount for any state organization. Now, you guys in Memphis, I will tell you that, I mean, I'm not sure where each of you work or what your departments are, but DCS got 1,700 Timby sets to use in recovery courts and also with some foster care programs. So Jennifer Fisher is the woman who, so those are all delivered. I don't know how they all got, divided up, but check with her. But then, this is, people just they write grants and they get TIMBYs, and I get them to you guys. So you can, if you guys want to put my email in the chat, it's trish@timbytalks.com. Please feel free to reach out to me directly, and then we can deal with getting that to you. I mean, you can get the book on Amazon, people who have Prime, but it's not at a discount, and anybody who works, with what you guys do will get a discount. So better to come to me.
Perfect, thank you. So our next question is, do you have any tips for parents or caregivers on how to prepare themselves before talking with their child about this?
Right, that's great. So one of the things that Janet and I talk about, and this is, more, she's the expert, or has like the clinical background and knowledge for this, but it's called co-regulation. So that means for yourself to get centered and calm. So do the things that you're going to be teaching, taking a deep breath, reminding yourself it's not your fault, getting grounded, getting in like a calm place, understanding, if it's the person who is the addict, I don't know. It doesn't matter who it is. Reading a book should be fun. And so you're just going to read a book, and sitting and connecting together. That is just a great way to bond and be able to talk to this child who really does want to talk about this. So it's called co-regulation. So it's about trying to get yourself as grounded and in a, as calm a place as possible. And I always take deep breaths before I do a presentation, before I read to the kids, and we all do it together. You exhale. And then, oh my God, that just right now, that feels so good. So that's what I would recommend.
Do you think that this could be used as a potential training aid for maybe teachers to know what to do in the situation?
Yes. So one of the next sort of phases that Janet and I are stepping into is creating a training. So we are working with the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children, it's DEC. And they do DEC trainings to, sort of across the country. So we are in conversation with them about adding a TIMBY component. TIMBY is a partner with DEC. But also just because I'm in the state of Tennessee, I'm here. So I work with a lot of the schools, and they've been asking, and also for foster parents we're doing a book club study for foster families. And so yes, we are working on creating a training that, you don't have to have it. It just enhances what that you're looking for, especially in the workbook, which, digs into some more work that you can do. So yes.
Do you have any tips on maybe approaching a child who's resistant to talking about this, or maybe doesn't want to open up about having this conversation?
Sure. So, when a child isn't ready to talk about something, they're not ready to talk about it, right? So the recommendation is you just can leave that out for them to go at their pace. Like forcing someone to talk about a trauma is just more traumatic. So people that, have reported back to me, I've never had it where, and again, this is the guy who just kind of breaks the ice, right? So you just have a TIMBY there, and kids, even older kids, they are just drawn to this. And then if you just had the book out, and then a child can approach that with their own timing, and then just let them come to you asking the questions. So
This is all really great information, and we're really, really thankful that you were able to come and present to us today. Thank you so much for taking.
so happy to be here with you guys.
Really, really appreciate it. Thank you again.
Okay, so do you want me to in the chat just put my address or my email?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. That'd be great.
Looks like okay. I sent that. Well, that's to the host and the panelists. I don't know how to get it to go to everybody. Maybe you guys have that.
Yeah, we'll send it out to everybody.
Okay, awesome. Thank you guys. You're amazing, doing amazing work.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Okay, bye.
Bye.